So if you've been on the internet long enough, you've probably heard about the Great Emu War. It's a battle pitting man against bird, and guess what? Man lost. If you haven't heard of it, or you're just wondering if it actually happened, hello, welcome to Nerdy and Quirky. Here's some cool history on Australia's war on emus. Our story begins in Western Australia in the late 1920s. You see, towns were popping up to settle soldiers after the First World War. About 5,000 servicemen were given farmland to tend to wheat and sheep. It was going great until three terrible things happened in pretty rapid succession. First, in 1929, the Great Depression dropped the price of wheat. The Australian government promised subsidies, but the money never came in. Second, a drought. So not only was their wheat selling underpriced, they couldn't grow enough of it. And finally, by 1932, 20,000 emus arrived. Wait, what? Now here's the thing about emus. After their breeding season inland, they head to the coast for a sweet post-coital vacation, and they chose to party on the farmland. And now this sounds hilarious, if not adorable, until you realize that the emus were really terrible guests. They would trample and eat the farmers' already struggling crops. They would tear holes into fences, and they would make paths for other vermin like rabbits to join the party as well. It was basically a music festival, except instead of hipsters and headdresses, it was 6-foot-tall flightless birds. Terrifying. So the farmers had a problem, and they were getting pretty emotional about it. But being a colony of ex-soldiers, they figured if we get a few machine guns, we can fix this. So they petitioned the Australian government and met with the Minister for Defence at the time, George Pearce. And you'd think if a bunch of farmers went up to the government and said, "We need machine guns to shoot some birds," they'd be laughed right out of the room. But George Pearce heard them out, and he agreed to supply them with a small army and guns for two reasons. One, birds would make excellent target practice, and two, he figured it would be a good PR move. He even sent a camera crew to cover the war to show that he was taking care of the veterans. But things were rocky from the start. The war was scheduled to begin in October 1932, but was delayed for a month due to rain. Then, on November 2nd, 1932, the troops arrived, led by Major G.P.W. Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery. The war was on. Pearce challenged the men to gather 100 emu skins, Inglorious Bastard style.
Each and every man under my command owes me 100
emu
scalps. And I want my scalps.
Except it seems that emus are a lot harder to kill than Nazis. The first attack was on a mob of about 50 emus, which, side note, should have been a sign of how tough this mission was gonna be, that a group of emus is called a mob. With such a large group, the soldiers figured they could just fire their machine guns and wipe them all out. I mean, the guns fired 300 rounds a minute, no man could escape the hail. Except emus are no man. The birds quickly ran out of range of the guns and began to adapt to the hunt, Planet of the Emus style. One soldier even said,
"Each pack seems to have a leader now, a big black-plumed bird which stands fully 6 feet high and keeps watch while his mates carry out their work of destruction and warns them of our approach."
Which again, terrifying, but hilarious. And if you think so too, make sure to hit that like button, or else the emus will find you. Anyway, there was a report of some more tame emus down south, which should have made for easier targets, but even those ones were too tough for the men. Major Meredith finally went it and put guns on the trucks for a good old drive-by. But the emus outpaced them, clocking in at 50 kilometers per hour, or 31 miles per hour for you imperial heathens. The trucks couldn't keep up, and the ground was too unstable to take a shot. They did manage to kill at least one bird by running it over, which caused the car to swerve and then crash into a fence. Even dead, the bird still won. By November 8th, just 6 days after deployment, the first round of the war was over. The press, originally outraged by the concept of cruelty behind the mission, just began to roast its many failures. Reports of the number of emus killed range from 50 to 500. Either way, with 20,000 emus, that means they only solved about 2.5% of the problem. The birds still ruled the land. Which sucked for the farmers who just wanted to work. So they continued to petition for help, and by November 11th of the same year, the second round of the Emu War was approved, and the machine gun party returned on November 13th. Now this time around, these men were battle-hardened. They knew the strengths and the weaknesses of these birds. They were ready. And a month later, on December 10th, in what must have been the highlight of Major G.P.W. Meredith's military career, almost 1,000 of the birds were dead. 986 and 9,800 360 shots, a kill rate of 10%. The emus were scared off, man had won. Except about 3 years later, the birds were back with a vengeance. Oops. So that was just some cool history on the Great Emu War. Now, what about you guys? What should I talk about next week? The wildlife of Julius Caesar, or are you up to learn about the best hoaxes history has to offer? Tell me down below. Don't forget to subscribe to Nerdy and Quirky for more cool history. And if you want to keep on learning, check out these videos I make on the Snarled YouTube channel about awesome females in history. It's a good time, but either way, have a lovely day.